unmute myself. Yes, I can.
Yeah, you can see my screen and my audio is good. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I'll also try to monitor the chat session. I'm thinking, or we could get to towards the end. I'm thinking. So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Deb and Badgerland User Group for allowing us to present one more time here. So I think last time we did was, forget it was Creo 7, what's new, and then a little bit of simulation. So this time, since Creo 8 was released a couple of months ago, we thought of doing what's new in Creo 8 compared to Creo 7.0. Okay. Again, my name is Thiagu Palaniappan, work for TriStar. Those who are not familiar with TriStar, real quick, we are a company that helps manufacturing companies adopt software systems and processes to help them, achieve better product development and to be more efficient. And we do this by being the largest worldwide resellers for PTC products. We are headquartered in Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm based out of the Chicagoland area. I've presented quite a lot of times in these Badgerland user groups and throughout the other user groups in the country. With that said, I'll just quickly going over the agenda. As always, I try to put in a lot of information. We'll try to wrap up around like 12:55. I'm thinking 5 minutes before 1 so that we don't go over, but I'll try my best to get through at least half of these. I'm thinking some of the core enhancements. Some of the ones that I've listed towards the end, like simulation, additive manufacturing, obviously require add-on licenses, but I thought of focusing more on the day-to-day activities of a Creo user, the core areas that they've improved on, right? So we'll go over that. And first one, before I even show you some examples, I thought it's important to understand what are the areas of Creo 8 in Creo 8 that PTC enhanced compared to Creo 7, right? So it's on the system level, there are a few things for dual monitor support, from core modeling, right? Whole sheet metal design, the whole features improved, a lot of surfacing improvements, model tree improvements that might help all users. If you use welding, if you use assemblies, right? Detailing, all those, there was a pretty interesting one called inseparable assembly for purchasable purchase components. It's very useful, I think. So first step, good first step, I think, by PTC. And a few others, related to add-on extensions, which you may or may not have, but this is just a quick snapshot of where the enhancements have been. And obviously, we cannot cover everything in an hour, but we'll try to focus on the core areas. And I'll point you to some resources towards the end as to where to get more in-depth information about the entire assessment enhancement compared to Creo 7. Some of you may still be on Creo 7 or Creo 4. So this is mainly going to be on what's new in 8.0. And I'll try my best to kind of show that in the next 45 minutes or so. Some of you may be thinking about moving to Creo 8 or Creo 7. And here's a quick snapshot of the Windchill compatibility. You would need to have a specific date code of Windchill and the CPS to get 7.0 and 8.0. As you can see here, right, you require 11.1 MO20 CPS 17. It's 11.1 or 11.2 and 12.0. And many of you may know this, starting Creo 5 and 6, almost every March, April, springtime, you may have noticed PTC is releasing a new product, right? Creo 6 is released, and then in 2020, 7 and 2021, 8. So you're going to be seeing a yearly release. And which means the enhancements are also going to be incremental. Having said that, if you consider all the areas, it'll be a lot of enhancements. But if you consider just the core areas, there are some very good productivity and usability enhancements that are and even functional improvements, I think, that I like. Okay, so I just installed it a couple of weeks ago and been playing with it. So based on that, just giving you a little bit of a demo and presentation here. So I'll try to switch between the slides and the software so I can show you also what's the enhancement. We'll quickly talk about it. So first off, dashboards, right? We're all used to the evolution of the dashboard. Many of you might remember it used to be a dialog box once upon a time with OK, preview, cancel back in the old Pro Engineer days. And it has evolved, right? It's come a long way. And in Creo 8, what they did was they added the panels. They allow you to have multiple panels open, right, at the same time. It has a much more optimized position depending on if you have the model tree enabled or disabled before. Sometimes it used to go on top. So there's some basic UI enhancements, and it'll also remember the open panels the next time when you create that same feature or edit definition of that feature. And there are some settings for it, right? You could say, I want you to automatically open the important panel. So when you do an extrude, most likely the placement tab will automatically open. When you do rounds or weld, the references tab should always be open. So it's more like the system understands to give you the most primary panel. And then from there on, you can go and customize, like I have quite a few panels open here, right? I have this guy, and quite a few in here. So let's take a quick look at this enhancement. And so what I have is Creo 8.0. That is the very first date code that we have. And I'm going to open up, let's see here, a part or an assembly. It's actually a part with multiple bodies. And it looks very much like Creo 7 and Creo 4, when you take a look at it. But then let's say I'm going to create some feature here, right? I'm going to really quickly go and do an extrude or something like that, right? I'm doing an extrude here, just a simple one for now, right? I'll just do a very basic extrude here, and I'm completing it right in there. And then, I'm probably going to just, let's say I want to go remove material and all that, right? Now, this is where you have your tabs, right? Placement, options. The thing now is they allow you to kind of float those tabs around. So maybe for body options, it's almost like a floating one, and it remembers that too, right? You can have these in there, right? For every feature, it kind of works that way. So maybe I wanted to cut it through all the geometry there or all the bodies right there. I got it, right? Now, when I go back and edit definition real quick, it should remember, as you can see, it gives you the dashboard, and it should remember those panels that are open, right? So you can either dock it, right? Or you could just minimize it. You can just click on this little guy right there, and it kind of minimizes that, right? So mainly, it may not be that helpful for basic features, right? Maybe for more complex geometry, when you do a variable section sweep, or when you do welds, or maybe even in sheet metal design, where you'd like to go and update the relief type. You want to change the shape or the profile. So that's when it'll be nice to have those tabs automatically open, right? So that's something that let me undo what I did here. So let's just get rid of that. For example, if we're to go into the weld module, right? It's available in the base package. Most of you may have used it. It's been there for a long time. So there, I'd like to do like let's say, fillet weld. I selected fillet weld, and notice that when I clicked on the command, it automatically knew to provide me with the most basic or the important primary panel automatically expanded, right? So when you're a new user, many times it happens that, okay, you don't know which one to select, what have you. It's nice that they have it already on. And now I can just go and say, okay, side 1, side 2, and I could, there's my, I can change the size, right? Now I'm thinking it's not solidified, right? In Creo 4, they introduced it to be a solid weld, so you can add for mask properties and do FEA. So maybe I like to have this options tab also. Now, what if I want multiple ones open? By default, as you can see, when I open one panel, the other panel goes away, but I should be able to just, drag it out. I can just go to my options panel, right? I should be able to just leave it up here, for example. I can just go to the intermittent. So maybe I want to do an intermittent weld. So my point is I could have multiple ones open and kind of, place it however I want. And you also notice how, since I had the model tree open, it knew to position it like this. Before, sometimes it'll come on top and, you're trying to select something in the tree. You got to go hide on hide. Those are minimize, maximize. Those things are avoided now. So maybe I want to go to solid, right? And it's a little more efficient way. You can still use your mini toolbar and everything that's been there for a long time. Since Creo 4, they introduced mini toolbar. But while in the middle of feature creation or edit definition, it's nice to have these panels automatically open. So now it's solidified. I'd like to enable the intermittent weld right in there, right? And maybe that's a little small. So maybe I'll set it to a specific size. And then I'll say I want to make that equal, right? So maybe I want to make it, let's see here. We'll just go end with the weld right there. So kind of evenly space that out. And I'm done, right? I'm just middle clicking out of it and I'm done with that feature. Now, if I'm going to go edit definition on that, right, using my mini toolbar, as you can see here, it is going to pop up those additional panels that I expanded, right, in the last time. So again, this is configurable. If you don't prefer this, there's a setting. So right now, I'm going to just go put them back on where it was, right? But when you start even a new feature, it should come with a minimum of one primary one, but there was a setting for that. If you go to File Options and under Windows Settings, you can control this. You could say, I want to reset all the panels, right? Maybe I'm going to work throughout the day on different features, and now I don't see a use for you to save those. All this gets saved in your config.ui, right? If you don't have a config.pro option, pretty much all these customizations will typically get saved in the UI file, the .ui file that they introduced back in Creo 2, right? Automatically open important panels or not. So maybe you're more like you always like going up there and doing it. You don't like the cluttering your screen. It's up to you. But by default, they've enabled it, right? So that's an option there. So let me get back to this, and that's for all features. I showed you a couple of features, but it's the same for pretty much all the features out there. And then datums have been improved at the display, right? We're just going through the fundamentals here before we talk about actual part modeling. Just wanted to go over some of the appearance and usability enhancements here. They finally have a transparent, a shaded kind of display, and you can control the transparency of the datum plane. It's pretty nice where you can have, unlike before where the datum plane used to be just like the four borders, that's it, and it's just like it is fully transparent. You can control that transparency level, right? By default, it's set to a specific value like 7 to 10, and then you can go control that. And also they finally improved the coordinate system. If you remember the old one versus new one, it's more using RGB, the color axes, you can select it better. It is always a little bit difficult for new users. You have to hover over the name to get it. So those things are improved, including datum point display, right? So those are some improvements on the display side. And one common request from many customers, right? I used to have a workaround for this during my industry days, but is to have some config options to control the default datum plane size in Creo. It's typically, depending on the unit system you use, it's like 500 by 500. The first rectangle or circle you sketch will be really huge, if you remember. And the way to work around was create a start part where you would predefine the size of the plane, right, and then it won't fit back, to the model if you make changes. So there are some workarounds, there are some pros and cons in that. Finally, it's nice that they have this datum display default config option with 3 available options. I'll kind of show you in the demo where you can, you can predefine it with the height and width, the default datum, right? Once you place it, yes, you can always change it like before, but by default, I always want that plane to be, I don't know, 10 by 10 or 20 by 20 or something. So, it doesn't clutter the screen, and it helps a lot, especially in large assemblies and complex parts, I think. So those are a couple of the datum improvements. Actually, before I proceed further, let's just take a quick look at that as well. So let me just open up another model here. I'm going to open up a simple part file. And whenever you create a new part, you get those 3 planes as always, right? So let me just go unhide these planes that I've hidden here and also enable my plane. And now what you see is I'm also going to enable some points, and you see that it gets my attention immediately, right? I do see in this model there are 4, 5 datum points. Before, you still can turn on your datum point tags and all that, but it's nice how they have made a little bit the default color for the datum point with that red X. That helps. I thought that's the first thing that caught my eye when I was testing Creo 8.0 playing with it. And then this shaded display here, right, on this. The good thing is it doesn't always remain shaded. So there's some smartness built in, right? If I'm going to do a sketch, I don't like it to be shaded, and the system understands that, and it'll behave like before. See, I'm in sketch mode, and now it just doesn't shade it or anything, right? It's just like as always, like before. Now let me cancel out of that. You could always go and control that, right? You could just say I don't want, right? I even have a config option to set it back to the legacy type, things like that. You have it, but there's a little new option there, plain fill display. And you can also control, the level of the transparency there. So if I go back to my options here, and if I go to entity display, right in here, show display shaded datum planes. That's new, right? And then show with color fill, and maybe I want to set it to something like 30, 35 right in here. I'm going to just say, not save my config, but there it is. You can see it's a little more darker than before. But again, you know, so it understands depending on the mode you are in. If you're in the middle of a feature creation, things like that, like sketch environment, for example, it understands to switch back. Or there are also areas where it like to, for example, if I'm going to go to no hidden style, it understands that when you're in no hidden style, it has to go back to the non-shaded mode. So there's some little bit of built-in intelligence, I should say, where it automatically does it for you. It remains that way for shading edges, things like that, right? So that's one thing. And even when you create a new coordinate system, right? If I enable my coordinate system here, you could see how the coordinate system is a little more, a lot more apparent compared to before. There's my XYZ colored, or maybe I should just create a new one just to make it a little more clear. I create a new coordinate system, and we'll just attach it to some datums here. It's a good practice to always attach it to stable references when you create any feature, as always, right? And then as I just created that plane and a coordinate system, I'm sorry, and then I can obviously rotate it, what have you, give the directions. But in the past, the way that you would select that, right? You have to be exactly on the name and everything. Now, you know, pretty much anywhere, and all these can be controlled, right? You have an option under, if you go to your system appearance, and if you go to your datum, right in here, RGB color axes are enabled. If you want, you can turn them off. You can apply your own axis colors and everything. That's an option like before, but those are all, again, so datums have some improvements now in Creo 8. Now, one other thing is, let me hide this. I'm gonna go create a new plane real quick. So let's just say if you want to create a through plane through that face, right? As always, you know, the software always creates it as big as your the geometry, or there could be some hidden geometry, imported features. See, I do have an imported feature here, and it's probably I might have some surfaces or entities extending out. That's why it's so big, right? So this is the default behavior even now in Creo 8. But you do have a new config option, like I mentioned, that allows you to control, more about, as to how to control the size of this plane. I know we still have the good old display, and it can select a size, right? As always, that's been there for a long time, right? Nothing new, right? In the wildfire days, we had that, right? You can just go, just confirm to that size of a reference. Or many times I would just go manually, manually adjust it. So all this has been there for a long time, right? This option. But what they did with the new Creo 8 is they have the config option, which I like, where I go and just do a display datum. And if you go to datum display default, it still fits to the model outline as before. No change in that. However, we have this pre-configured size, and then the reference size, where the system will pick the first reference you pick to select the size of the plane. It's pretty nice, I thought. So I could go to pre-configured size. I could set that right there. I could also go and say, I want to control the height and width of that. So if I just search for the height config here, and if I go into datum outline, so they have a datum outline. If you just search for outline, default height, you could just set it to, let's say, 20. Similarly, I want to do one for, we'll just do outline, and then we'll just do one for width. I'm going to set it to 20 right up there. And what that does is, now when I create a new plane, right, I'm going to just create let's see here, if I could just go create a new datum plane. Maybe I'll just pass it through this point, and this surface right up there. You see that size that it's set to is that 20, 25, whatever we had. Of course, I could just then pattern that plane as always, just like before, right? If that point is pattern, things like that, right? And it kind of maintains that size, etc., right? So I could always go back, change that plane. If I go edit definition on that plane, you will see under display how it picked up that 2020 width and height information there, right? So that's really nice where it knew that. Now, the other config option is this reference could be auto-selected, right? So based on what you pick first, it will automatically pick that surface, right? Or you could just leave it default as you would like before. So this is could be useful for when you start that first one, right? Whenever you go say new part, right? And then you have those three planes, and then it's something that, we always, many times we would change it, right? Many times during my industry days, as an admin, I would go back to redefine these in my start part, and you see it's always some 500 by 500. I mean, depending on your in metric or inches, right? It has its default, and I used to even create a circle, hide it, right? So, and then set it to like diameter 10 or something and hide it in my start part. So always it will be smaller. So it's really nice how they have those new options now, right? So some all configurable, right? Pretty much. So getting back to the other things in here, visibility, right? Still staying with the basics of the usability here. I really like how you can control the transparency of bodies that it is introduced in Creo 7, right? Body in one part can have multiple bodies, right? I may have shown you this in the last time when I covered Creo 7. And then quilts and tessellated geometry, right? So maybe you did some geometry topology optimization, or you probably have some STL file imported. So tessellated geometry versus quilts versus bodies, you could have individual selections for them, in the sense from a standpoint to control the transparency, as you can see here, right? And you also have this really nice option that I like compared to before, where you had to select the component and then make it transparent or use the appearance. There are a couple of ways of doing it as a style. Now you could select any component and then you could say, I want to make it transparent right inside of your mini toolbar, right? And also selection, right? For selection, you have still the good old solid surfaces, all solid. You also have quilt or body selection, right? So if you want to quickly select the quilt, quickly select the body, so you don't have to keep right-clicking or query selecting to it anymore. So quite a few options from the visibility and selection side. Here's an example of the transparency I was talking about. Right in your graphics toolbar, you have this three options for selection, right? I could select the component, make it transparent, and individually, they're all, each transparency, you can control them individually, independently if you apply the appearance setting from the color. But if you're going to apply it globally, it's going to be the same, but it still helps to better visualize large assembly, I think, right? So maybe let's take a quick look at this one too. You still have your good old macros and map keys I'm using to close files. As you can see, Control W is pretty much close file and closing the files in there. So let me open up another an assembly here. I believe I have, let's see here, let's open up another one. It is an assembly that has both solid components. It has some tessellated geometry. It has a quilt, for a sheet metal design. I've created some quilt in there. So you could see how the appearance would work inside of Creo 8.0, the new appearance control in the graphics toolbar. So it's just still opening it up as we speak. The appearance in Creo 7, they did a little bit of work in here, mainly for B-rep. The thing was, how do we see the difference between a B-rep geometry and tessellated? But now they've expanded it to quilts. So you can just go up here, right in here, right? Next to your display datum features, you have solid bodies, quilts, and tessellated. So what I could do right now is I could pretty much go in here and say for my quilts, right? I can enable transparency, disable transparency. And once I enable them, I'm able to just drag them out. And as I'm dragging it, you could see this is the quilt I have, right? This is a surface quilt. I also have a few welds in here that I've done as a surface weld or a solid weld. Even those seem to be, to be controlling or going away when I set it to 100%, and I can control the opaqueness, how transparent it is, right? I can control that for quilts. Right now, I'm going to leave it at 0 right here. Similarly, I do have some tessellated geometry here, right? I go into the tessellated geometry, the same thing, right? As I drag it, I can, this is the one geometry that using optimization, we have created it using freestyle, and there it is, right? That's the part, and that alone, you're able to globally control all the tessellated geometry that kind of differentiates those different types, geometry types in your assembly model, right? Now, what about solids, right? Right now, solids is set to 50%, but I don't see anything really set to transparency. That's the reason is I've not set it up, right? I can just go back. I can go here and say, I want to set it to transparency, for example. And when I set it to transparency, now that's quicker, right? Back in Creo, in the wildfire days, Creo, it used to be a display style. You still have it, right? I could go alt select a component like before. And once you grab that, you still have your good old component display transparency, right? That's how we used to do all these years, right? You still have that, that'll be part of the style. And you're not controlling it using that method. This one, what I did now is it's more like selecting any component, and then I'm gonna say transparent, right? It's more like a geometry, selection, and then you say transparent. Now I could go to that solid quilts, and I could say I can control the transparency of that, of all solid bodies that have transparency applied on them. So it's a pretty nice one. Or I could say, disable transparency. So even though I'm enabled it, I'm disabling it globally here for better visualization in large assemblies. It might be handy, is what I think. You could always select it and say, get rid of that, select it, right? And then, there's a new make transparent, which is different from your component display style. So you no longer have to go to your appearance states or your appearance color. Way back in the days, we used to set it up more on the appearance side. If you remember, right, we would have a transparency set up, which all that still works, but I really like how you're able to quickly do it right inside of the assembly model, right? Inside of your mini toolbar, especially, right? So let me get back to, that's a couple of improvements on the visibility side. Still staying on visibility here on the sketcher, there are some minor improvements. Overall, they've enhanced the way sketch dimensions behave more from a dimension background color. So depending on where you are, where the dimension is, and when you drag it, you will see when you move the dimension, the background color will not be there. However, when it's on a shaded geometry like this, or if it's away from here, you will see it adapt to that. And this works both in 3D edit mode as well as instead of sketch mode. So you really have, they've introduced dimension background for quite some time now in Creo 6 itself, but then slowly it's been expanded more, right? It behaves a little more better, so you can control how the dimension background will be shown. It's going to be always be showing up in one context. And maybe weak dimensions, sometimes you want to quickly hide the weak dimensions. They have a nice little show weak dimension display icon right now that also helps, right? So a couple improvements on there now. One of the big ones in part modeling that I like is this model tree enhancement, where you have this concept of design items, which was there, in Creo 7, if you remember, the bodies were showing up, but now the quilts and bodies, they would be listed under design items. So when I say design items folder, the design items folder is essentially where you could probably have your annotations, your materials, right? Anything other than the regular features you might want to put in the design items. It could be shown in the same tree or in a separate tree for better organizing and for comparisons, especially when you work on a lot of surface designs like this, right? When complex geometry with a lot of components, I'd like to have some organization there, irrespective of the regeneration order. So that's a new enhancement there. So you do have the option, you have some model tree filters now that allow you to show, obviously, quilts and bodies like before, but on top of it, you can also create folders in there. You can also create your own little folders, or better, custom folders, I should say, right? It helps you organize components, I should say more bodies in a part, quilts, materials. This is not available in assembly mode. It's mainly in the part mode, obviously. So this is really huge, this new design items folder that allowing you to organize these. I should show an example in here. It'll make more sense, but here's how my design items tree looks like. You see, it has how it is grouped all the, it is placing, I shouldn't say grouped, it is kind of putting all the quilts in one place, all the bodies in one place, regardless of the regeneration order. So that's really very nice to see. So here, you can also create new groups. You can think of a custom group as almost like a folder, right? So here I've created a custom group in here. I've added some bodies into it. I can just drag and drop quilts and bodies. So it's mainly for managing quilts and bodies, right, in part mode. You can create your own custom group. You can enable them in the filter. You can even drag it out in as a separate tree. So you can even set that moving forward, this should be my default custom group. So anything I create, any quilt or bodies I create, I would like you to put it, have that, have those geometries right inside of that. It's almost like activating a layer, right? It's kind of very similar technology here, but you're saying, I want to activate this, and moving forward, whatever I do should go into that. So again, remember, this is the design items tree. Your model tree is still the same as before. You still have your feature order and everything, but this is regardless of the regeneration order, you have some control, right? Again, here there's a side-by-side in here where I have my design items tree and my regular model tree. If I select a geometry, it should highlight in both sides, right? To which feature it belongs, to which folder it belongs, or where is a quilt exactly. It gives you better visibility, especially when you may not be a surfacing expert, and you're probably reviewing a coworker's design, and you understand his design intent much better when you use this, in my view, right? I've been there myself, where I used to do a lot of surfacing myself, but then some of the users may not be that familiar, or they're new to surfacing, and whenever they get a surface model, they don't know how to edit them. It's a little bit, or they don't know how to interrogate it, if I were to put that word. And it just gets a little bit easier with this new design tree. On top of it, I'll show you this real quick here. I'll kind of run through a couple of them, and so I can show you all in one go. But there's also a very nice, cool option called Snapshot. I really like this Snapshot option, where you have this model done, right? In the past, in Creo 7, if you were to see how a specific quilt or surface was created, when it was merged, when it was extended, how it was at that point of time, I will have to drag the insert indicator, roll back the model. You can still do that, but many times from a regeneration standpoint, depending on how large the model is, you may have several patterns on it. It's much easier now to say, show me the snapshot for quilt or body. So it works on quilts or bodies, right? You can just right click and create a snapshot. And what it allows you to do is a quick snapshot of how that surface looked like at that point of time when you selected it, right? Even though you're not rolling back the model. Very, very nice way to review your design. And not only that, you can even copy it. You can create your own shortcuts, for example, right? Keyboard shortcuts has been there for a long time, including map keys. So you can even use your own shortcuts, and can select a quilt and say, okay, I want to show you, create a snapshot. It's a very easy, as they say, faster analysis, right? To understand the different stages, or even the design intent of whoever worked on this, right? Maybe I'm working on somebody else's model, or even for you to help, let others in the company know why you did that quilt. It helps, I think, both this design tree, the custom folder, as well as the snapshots, right? All of them are going to be useful. One more, let me just go back up here. I'll quickly take a look at it. Right in here, just a few things. So let me go into quilts. I'm going to open up one of the parts here where I can show you that it's a typical surface design model. As you can see here, maybe we'll get rid of the planes for now. Okay, so by default, what I'm seeing is your typical model tree as always, but there is a design items. And when I expand the design items, I see quilts, bodies, and folders, right? Or, custom folders can be created. That's what those three, that's what it's meant to be, right? Now, before I show you that, expand that, I could always go to my layer tree like before, right? Back in the days, right? It's the same thing, right? I'm able to drag this out, right? Pretty easily, right? Unlike before, where you had to go set up that config option, enable model tree independent, yes, no. It's a lot easier now, I think, right? I can enable, disable them, right? There it is. I can go turn on the design tree, there it is. And when I turn on the design tree, the design items, instead of showing up here, it shows up as a separate tree, right? So you can parallelly look at that too and help with organization. Now, if I go expand this, right? So here I could set up some filters, right? I can go to tree filters, and I could say when I go to my body or quilt, I've enabled consumed bodies. You know, for example, when a quilt gets consumed, it's no longer available, right? But then I could just still have it listed here. By default, it's turned off, but I could say consumed quilts and bodies, I would like you to show that, right, for example. And custom groups, for example, right, your materials, annotations. So all those are typically meant to be managed inside of the design items. So in a very complex model with a lot of, lots of things going on, you no longer have to use the traditional insert mode. You still have to do insert mode if you want to do something before another feature, but I really like how you have these organized like this, right? So here I can go in and further interrogate this, for example, right? So I do have the driving top in here, right? It says, I do have this. I can just right click and say, show me the snapshot. It kind of shows me how that was done. Now, the thing is, as soon as I click outside, it's gone, but it's nice that how I have the ability to copy the snapshot at that point of time and reuse it further. Or I could say, simply show me the snapshot, and I can just say show snapshot, and I can keep doing this by right clicking, or a better practice would be maybe doing a quick keyboard shortcut, right? I'm sure all of you know, starting Creo 4, PTC has a pretty good default keyboard shortcut, right? Let's see here, it comes up, right? There it is, right? Commands with assigned shortcuts, without assigned shortcuts, right? If I go with assigned shortcuts, and these are all, many of these are default. I may have customized a couple, but most of them are not, they come out of the box, right? And I can also say, show me commands without assigned shortcuts. And this is nothing new. It's been there since Creo 4. All your operations are there. So there, I'm probably going to go with a snapshot. Let's see if it finds a snapshot in here. Right. Computer was a little bit slow today. I don't know if I did some Windows update or something. There it goes. Okay. Show snapshot right up there. And I'm just going to go say, okay, we'll just give it, I don't know, S or something like that. Okay. See, this is another thing, right? If S is already taken, right, it's used in Sketch to create a sketch, right? S is already there. So I'm going to say, no, we don't want that. I don't know, we'll just give it Z. I don't know if Z is taken. Okay, looks like we're good there. I click OK out of that. So now what I can do, I can just select this. I'm just using my macro here, right? There it is, right? I'm just keep clicking it, and I can see how it was done, right? That is pretty nice. I can even go individually inside each, one, and I can do that too, right? I can expand it and say, okay, how it was during the merge, and I could just write, I could pretty much select on the quilt at any point of time, and I'm able to just see it, right? And if I refresh or repaint, it's gone, right? It's gone right there. At the same time, I could also start dragging things. Right now it looks like I have most of the quilts, the driving ones up here, and I do have a few bodies in here. But if I look at my housing, the driving surfaces are in here. So maybe I'm thinking I should probably use these driving, let me just go Control select these. I'm just gonna go drag these into my, there it is, right? Into the driving housing folder. So I could just create my own folder there. I could just go to operations and just say create a custom group. I can create my own, as you can see here, I created my own custom group. Maybe I do one for the parting, something like, whatever, right? I just put in one, and then I could, whatever quilt that is going to be, right? This particular quilt where it belongs, right? So as you can see, when I click on it, it already shows me, okay, I already have a split one right there, but you see how it clearly shows me where it belongs in here and in here for better organizing, right? So you're able to drag and drop irrespective of this order. And I really like that snapshot option, the right-click snapshot option that's available now starting Creo 8.0, okay? And then the next thing I wanted to cover is, let me just close this one here. They also improved, apart from those folders, and generally when you do design using several surfacing and quilts, let's see, actually it has some patterns and everything. I'm just going to go, still have your good old insert mode and everything. Let's make it a little bit faster regeneration time so I'm not getting all those patterns in there. I'm in this situation here, and again the same design items folder, right? I'm able to go. Let's see if I can show the design tree. and there's your quilts and everything, right? So here you do have your driving surface right in here. So driving back, there's a situation where sometimes at this point of time, I'd like to replace. So before I explain this, before I show you this, PTC did some very nice feature I like is the replace reference, which has been there for a long time, but recursively trying to automatically go into the children, the grandchildren, and so on, right? So typically when you do a replace, right, in Creo 7 and prior, whatever you're trying to replace, the immediate children, you'll be able to see and you'll be able to see what's happening. But then you might run into failure to the next one, right? You know, I'm talking about if there's a parent-child relationship and then there's a grandchildren and so on, right? In a very complex model. I really like this new icon. They have replace references under replace, recursive references, I should say, which allows you to, which the system automatically goes at the next level and tries to fix any issues that you may have, you know, depending on, you know, you may have to help it obviously by selecting different references and everything. So here I have a scenario where I do have this driving back option, right? So it looks like, let's see what I used here, right? I used this driving back surface in here. Let me just say, show me the snapshot. So to create that back surface, looks like I've used this, right? It's amazing how that snapshot is really helping me. I didn't have to go insert mode all the way up to see how it was done, right? Now I can just go back to my, let's say this is the one, right? I do have another surface that I've hidden, and there it is, right? So I'm really looking at, let me just go back and do my snapshot. So there it is, right? I'd like moving forward, the blue surface to be used instead of this, right? And all its children should update, or I might run into failure depending on what reference I give, right? For additional things. So to do something like this, you know, there's something that during my industry days, I used to use it on datum planes also, where you have a lot of parent-child relationship. It used to be in the old Creo Engineer days itself, right? Replace references, right there. So when I say I want to replace references, right? I have the option to select that. Let's see if I hope it's still thinking right there. Let's see, it crashed on me a couple of times today earlier. So when I was using Creo after an update of my system here. So let's see, it's a little bit slow. Okay, so there it is, right? So this is the quilt I want to replace, right? And this is the icon I was talking about right here, the recursive references to replace references. That's pretty nice, where I'm able to go say, okay, instead of that, moving forward, I would like you to use this quilt instead, right? The second option, right? You see how that organizing has also helped me here. Now what it has done is it is going back in here. It is giving me the children and everything. I hit my little preview, right? It's trying to do it's replace and everything, right? At this point of time, it is only looking at the immediate children. What about the recursive children beyond that point? That's one of the main pain points sometimes when you make drastic changes, right, in Creo, right? There's going to be parent-child, you know, children over on top of children. It all comes down to modeling best practices. But here, this lists the recursive references, and it's pretty nice where it automatically goes in and it goes to the next level, and it tells me these are the missing ones, right? There it is, right? Now, missing reference has been there since, again, Creo 3.0, it showed missing reference. That's not a big deal. However, right now, as you can see, it is, you know, kind of showing me some of the missing references there, right? I could now change it to a different, you know, maybe instead of that, use this, for example. I don't know, I just picked something. It might fail. I have no idea what I picked there, but my point is, if you see the regeneration, as I'm changing it, it is recursively, if you see my on the right-hand side, the replace references there, it used that new one, right? As you can see here, right? And it's, if I go okay out of this, right? I was able to, it was, at least it gave me automatic regeneration and the ability to go and replace it further, right? You know, the real world, you may have to do it a couple more times where a lot more references might fail there, but at least, you know, it kind of helps you now. So now if I go back to that other quilt in here, maybe we'll just use the old one right in there, and we'll probably just hide that. There it is, right? So just a quick example, I thought, you know, that replace reference is something I really liked, especially that recursive one, right? The old replace reference itself has been there, but then the recursive one is a new enhancement. Pretty nice. A few other enhancements. I know we got about another 10 minutes or so here. We'll just quickly go through the rest of it here. On the action object support, right? If you see many of the editing tools for new users, sometimes they get confused. Many of these will be grayed out many times, right? Like extend and offset, unless you select, an object, the action is not available, right? That happened in Wildfire days, if you remember, when they moved from the old to the Pro Engineer Wildfire days. But now they do allow all these features to be, you can use the action object. Some of you may prefer action object. I personally prefer object action. We all have our preferences. So they've consolidated, right? You select, for example, if you select trim, you can switch between, are you going to trim a quilt or a curve, right? Overall, you see the dashboard itself, a lot more apparent, right? We talked about the panels earlier, but, it's a little more, the verbose is a little bit better, I think, as to how it's kind of nicely laid out. It started doing this in Creo 6 a little bit, but it's nice to allow both object action and action object workflows, right, for these editing features. A geodesic curve is a new enhancement in Datum curves, so I'm sure all of you have used point-to-point curves. During my surfacing days, I've used a lot of point-to-point curves, very useful, right? You can connect 2 points using a curve, and then you can tweak it using additional points, or you can even do a freeform one, in style. But this is a regular Creo. They have this geodesic curve that essentially picks the shortest path. If you pick a surface, right, or the geometry that it should be looking at. So I could have, I don't know, this could be like a shop floor, there's a robot right in here, and what is the shortest route, right? Or maybe for routing purposes, I could use when I create the datum curve, I'm selecting point 1, point 2, and I'm saying use this model or surfaces as a geometry, but it figures out the shortest distance. So geodesic itself means the shortest path, right, between 2 points, right? When you think about from our globe on Earth, when we have the latitudes and longitudes in there, when we pick 2 points, what is the shortest one? That's where the name geodesic is arrived. And so starting Creo 8, when you create point-to-point curve, you will see a geodesic curve option, right? So again, there are a few more part modeling ones, but I thought we'll just go through a couple more, and then maybe we'll see if there's any questions after this. Let me just go close these ones in here. So I got a very simple part in here with the curve done. I'll just probably get rid of this guy that's already done. And when I turn on my datum points, a lot more, it catches my attention. I do know there are 2 points right in there. I could always do the good old point tags, and that also helps, I guess. But when I go into my curve, right, I go into curve and I go through points. This has been there, and you see how, since I have the model tree, it knew to place expand this in here. So it's optimized for that, right? If I were to take out the model tree, it understands to keep it here. So the dashboard itself, some nice ones, and it automatically opened the placement. So if you're a new user wondering what to do next, just follow the red right in here, right? It kind of tells you what to do. So I'm going to select this point, and I'm going to select this point, right? You're just selecting a series of, like this, you could have selected an array of points too, but when I selected the 2 points, by default, it's giving you obviously a line connecting the 2 points, right? That's what it's doing. And back in the old days itself, we used to have this place on surface right in here, right? That's a quick way where it kind of projects it onto the surface. You can use a mini toolbar also for that, right? And then I could keep selecting the surface, or maybe I want to, just select the entire body. There it is, right? So this so far, nothing new. It's pretty, as in Creo 7, it's working. Now, the new thing that we have in Creo 8 is geodesic curve, where I select that either here or here. You see how it understands the shortest path, right? Now, let's do one more thing here. Right? Let me just make sure I have my regenerate set to auto regenerate. Yeah, that was in Creo 2. Remember, auto regenerate was turned on. The reason is I want to show you what happens if I were to just edit this guy. As I'm editing, can you see in real time, you see it jumps from, I hope, yeah, there it is, right? Can you see how it goes from this location? So I could see a lot of applications here. I know I mentioned about that robot in a factory floor. You're trying to find the shortest route. Things that is just, I made up that one. But more for routing, or maybe, it could be helpful. I think I'm sure there might be some more enhancements on this in later releases, I'm hoping. But it's a good step where, as I'm dragging those points, it knows to give me the shortest, so this obviously gives me the shortest line right there, but it knows to go around it and still pick up the shortest one based on the geometry I picked. So that's a enhancement I thought in Creo 8. Let's see here. I think there's one more. One more thing I want to show, and then we'll probably go after that. The hole command, right? Hole has a lot of enhancements. They finally have the sketched hole, right? I'm not talking about the old sketched hole for the profile itself, but you can do multiple holes in one go. A very, very long requested customer enhancement, I would say, right? Especially from other CAD systems, I've seen many customers request this. So finally, you're able to do, when you do your sketch, there are ways to either place the hole automatically on points that are in the sketch, right? Your sketched points, or it could be midpoints, or it could be along the vertices, right? So there are a couple of options there, right? There's and then they have better support, enhanced support finally for tapered and tapped holes. I mean, tapered hole itself was there in Wildfire 4.0. It's been there for a long time, but now you also have the straight option, right? So these are the options. You can say tapered tip, right? As you can see, that was not there. And during my industry days, I used to have UDFs for this, right? User defined features, and it's really nice to see that we are having all this automated now in the newer releases, right? Especially with better control on thread, how far the thread should go. So really some good options on the hole command also, where lightweight representation of the hole has been there for a long time on very complex patterns. You can reduce the regeneration time, but now they are applicable to all hole types. Before they were only applicable to certain hole types, but now any hole type, you should be able to go say, don't remove the hole or remove the material and do the and spend time on regenerating. Just show me a circle with the diameter. That's probably what matters in the drawing, maybe, right? Of course, your mass properties, the caveat being the mass properties are wrong now, but it's one of those things. You got to weigh your options here. So some nice enhancements in the hole itself. Maybe I'll kind of wrap up with this one. They have new tokens, like remember the hole node, the standard hole node, right? They have new hole tokens there. In the past, it'll always show this number of holes, right? You see through one hole because it's looking at that as when you do a pattern, depending on the number of quantity, even if it was one, even though it was a group, you had to go and even before we could go and edit the .html file to configure additional standard ones in here, and you can also control the format. But now they're calling it whole node tokens, wherein it uses whole instance count. So it will better show you the number of holes automatically when you do pattern, or if you use a sketched hole command, right? So a lot more options for holes in general. So maybe I think if I probably take, let's see here, maybe one example on hole. If I could open up, maybe I'll show you the basic hole option. One of the big ones in the whole command is
maybe we should break now. Thiagu, maybe we should break now. I've got 12:55 because you have a lot of content there, and maybe give somebody a chance to ask a question.
Sure.
We've got like 4 minutes, and then I would like to end it. I don't see anything in the chat.
Okay.
This also is an opportunity if anybody has a question about the door prize. Otherwise, you can email me. But does anyone have a question? You can just unmute yourself.
I have a question about the snapshot command. You showed us how you can copy the snapshot.
Yeah.
Does that mean that you can also paste the snapshot, and how would that work?
Yeah, so whenever you're doing a copy, you're essentially doing a copy paste in one go, right? So the snapshot is more like a visibility thing. You're just visualizing that surface geometry at that point of time when it was created without rolling back the model. So when you do a copy, so I should have probably explained that better. When I did a copy, it is doing a copy paste. So you are creating a duplicate surface there.
Okay, great.
Good question. Yeah, I really think that will really help. When during my surfacing days, I could have really used that. I'm sure many of you have done surfacing and with most of the bodies too. Right now we introduce bodies. It's, I mean, PTC, I should say, introduce bodies. It's really nice where on complex modeling, it gives you better clarity of where you were, how you got there, right? It's very useful, I think. Any other questions?
There is one in the chat. It says, pattern point quantity will calculate and appear in the whole note, asking that question.
Yes, that's correct. That's it used to be a little bit error prone before, but it will calculate it regardless of how you do it. You could be using a sketched hole like what I was about to show you, or you do the regular pattern because they use this new tokens. They're calling it whole instance count. It just used to be pattern underscore NO or number that used to be in the format. But yes, it is going to automatically show in the whole note. So you don't have to go and edit it in the drawing, etc. Any improvements in the modeling threads? Yes. So, you know, I don't know if you're, so Ken, I don't know if you're asking about the cosmetic thread feature itself or the helical sweep or the threaded hole on the whole feature itself. But
I was referring to the helical threads instead of having to calculate that. I mean, it'd be nice if we could just say, I want to put a 1/2-inch internal thread and click on a surface. Is there any improvements to that?
No, on the helical sweep, right? You're talking about the actual. So do you show right now your threads as a helical sweep?
Well, yeah, if we're going to do a 3D printed part or something like that, we want to show the threads, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. I see what you mean. Yeah, I was going to say, right, normally, yeah, I got it. Yeah, I got you. So normally we say it's not a good practice because it takes a regeneration time, but I see where you're coming from for 3D printing, yes, or even for analysis, right, FEA, you'll have to have the thread geometry. So no enhancement on the helical sweep itself, but they've improved that when you create a hole, and in the hole command, when you do a standard hole, right? Let's say you do a 1/4-20, or let's say you do a tapped hole, you have the ability to control that cosmetic surface, which I know you're not looking, that may not help you, but that they've controlled the depth of it. But helical, is there any specific things that you'd like to have? And we could let PTC know on helical sweep, anything that you're looking for, Ken?
I just thought it'd be nice if you wouldn't have to go to the machinery handbook and figure out the pitch diameters and all that other stuff when you're creating your sweep. You know what I mean? Threads haven't really changed in the last 100 years.
I know.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, very good point. I couldn't agree with you more. You're absolutely right. Maybe an option here, right? But I know they have. I mean, in Wildfire 2 itself. When you I mean, yeah, that is in the cosmetic thread. In the cosmetic thread, I know we can select standard ones. It'll be nice here when maybe some options here where you could just go and say, okay, standard size, and rather than me doing the math, I want you to do that. And it's yeah, maybe we'll definitely put it across to my contacts at PTC for sure. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that question. Anybody else? Oh, similar to SolidWorks does. Okay.
On that same note.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to be able to toggle between cosmetic and real threads, because sometimes you just want to toggle, you know?
Yeah.
See how it affects.
Really nice. That's an awesome idea, because when you do the cosmetic thread, what you're saying is it'll be nice to do an actual helical rather than sweeping it, rather than a cosmetic, it'll be nice to have a toggle here. But here I know when you do standard ones, right, you're able to select the thread size. And if I had selected a hole here, right, and there, right, if I select the start surface and everything, you're able to go your UNC, you're able to go, your quarter, whatever, right? You're able to do that. But the problem is it just shows that as a surface. So you can show in the drawing, it's a call out. That's the whole point, but I see both questions. Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe combine them, or at least give an option inside of helical sweep to get those standard options. Yeah, but not there yet. In Creo 8, it's not there. So good questions.
Yeah, I mean, one of the common uses for that is analysis, right? You don't care about showing threads normally, but you want to for analysis, or you want to for a picture.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, for doing a contact analysis, maybe for doing a bolt analysis. I see what you mean. Yeah, where we would have to really create the UDFs is a workaround. I'm sure most of you are using it right now. It's still not a perfect or an efficient way. I understand some of you may be using UDFs. Whenever there are some holes in the PTC software on such type of features. What I've done, at least during the past, like I showed you for that tapered and straight, I would create a UDF with several options as a tabled UDF where the user would use that. I mean, it requires a little bit of setup, obviously, but right now it'll be nice to have that kind of out of the box from PTC. It's a good point.
Okay, so I've got 1:02, and some people probably have 1 o'clock meetings, so I want to stop and thanks so much. Just a huge amount of information for everyone, and thanks again. This has been recorded, so if everything goes successful in a few minutes or 30 minutes, I'll get the link and I'll post it on our Facebook group, also our LinkedIn group, and our website, badgerug.com. But that might not happen until this weekend. We have a volunteer who does our website. Most likely TriStar will also post it on their website. So just kind of watch and let us know if you just email me if you don't see it, Deborah, debra.l.weich, weich@gmail.com. Everybody enjoy your summer, and thanks so much for joining. Thanks.
All right,
Thiagu.
thanks.
Thank you.
All.
Thanks, guys.